As you may already know or have guessed, I really enjoy developing voice applications for voice assistants such as Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. A few reasons I like developing for voice include: I think voice is the next and most natural evolution in human-to-computer interaction. When you stop and think about it, the keyboards, mice, and touchscreens we're all accustomed to are ways to interact with a computer on the computer's terms. But when we interact with other humans, it's often done by speaking and listening to what the others are saying. Voice applications bring that natural human-to-human style of interaction to human-to-computer user interfaces. Voice also offers a hands-free and accessible alternative to traditional user interfaces. It lets you interact with applications while your hands and eyes are otherwise engaged in some other activity, such as driving or cooking. Voice interaction also fulfills the promises of science fiction. In many of the great works of science fiction, such as Star Trek and 2001: A Space Odyssey, or even more modern approaches to science fiction such as Iron Man and Knight Rider, humans are able to speak to computers and robots to ask questions or achieve some task. Voice assistants such as Alexa and Google Assistant are a big step toward a future where science fiction's promise of talking to computers becomes reality. And finally, let's be honest, developing for voice is a heck of a lot of fun. It's a development experience unlike anything I've ever done. If you're watching this video, then perhaps you're wondering how you can get started in developing for voice. If so, then this is the video for you. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 ways to initialize, develop, deploy, and test Alexa skills. These include using the Alexa Developer Console, working with the Alexa Skills Kit command line interface, or ASK CLI for short, and using the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension for Visual Studio Code. So with no further delay, let's get started by looking at the first option, how to create voice experiences for Alexa using the Alexa Developer Console. Alright, to get started using the Alexa Developer Console, what you're going to want to do is come to developer.amazon.com. You're going to need an Amazon developer account already created, so I'm going to leave that up to you to do that before you get here. But once you have that account created, come to developer.amazon.com, go to Alexa, this link here, and under Skill Builders, you'll find the Developer Console link. Great. Now what you see here in this list, now this is my list, it's going to be different for you, but this is a list of several different Alexa skills that I've developed recently. I'm going to go and create a brand new skill for this video, and we're going to keep it simple. It's just going to be a Hello World skill. Nothing fancy whatsoever, but we're going to give it a unique name. Now this skill name, this is the name that is going to be used ultimately as the invocation name for the skill. So you're going to be able to say, Alexa, open hello something. In this case, I'm going to say hello console is going to be its name. So you're going to say, Alexa, open hello console, and that will launch the skill. I'm going to stick with the primary locale of English. If you're interested in knowing what kind of locales are available and how you might use them, I do cover that in my book. Wait till the end of the video to find out information on how to get my book. But for now, I'm just going to stick with English US, even though there's several other options here. Choose a model to add to your skill. There's all different kinds of skills. There's some for music, for video, knowledge, meetings, smart home, whatever. We're going to focus on custom skill. This is the one that is most flexible, that gives you the most opportunity to do pretty much whatever you want inside of your skill. All these other ones are more focused on a specific kind of task. Custom is going to allow you to do pretty much anything you want. So I'm going to stick with custom. Now we have our choice of which method to host our skill, either Alexa hosted Node, Alexa hosted Python, or provision your own. Provision your own is a little strange one. I may cover it in a future video, but for today I'm going to ignore that one. So then it comes down to Alexa hosted. Well, what does that mean, Alexa hosted? Well, ultimately your skill is going to be deployed in AWS Lambda, and what Alexa hosted does for you is just sets that up for you. There is a way that you can host it in your own AWS Lambda account, but if you say Alexa hosted, you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to put it into your own AWS account. In fact, you don't even need to have an AWS developer account to use Alexa hosted skills. It's just going to create an AWS Lambda space for your skill code to run. It's also going to create, among other things, a DynamoDB and an S3 bucket for any sort of sound, audio files, or maybe even visuals that you're going to include for screen-based Alexa devices. So then, if you're going to choose between Alexa hosted, you have your choice of Node or Python. Both are great options. I generally prefer Node. Nothing wrong with Python. I just feel more comfortable working with Node. And I find that there's a lot of great tools and libraries and frameworks out there for Node that come in very useful when working with Alexa. So I'm going to keep the Alexa hosted Node.js option selected. I'm going to come back up to the top and I'm going to say create skill. It's going to ask me what kind of skill I want, what kind of template I want to use. Most of these are focused on a very specific type of functionality that Alexa offers, and they will give you a fairly fleshed out skill to start with from which you can tweak and do whatever you want. Generally speaking, I almost never use one of these. I do the start from scratch, and what this is going to give you is just a very basic hello world skill to start from. At that point, you can tweak it to your heart's content and make it do whatever you want. In fact, you can make it do what these other templates do. These other templates get you there a little faster. I'm just going to focus though on the hello world skill. So I'm going to continue. And now this is going to take a few minutes. It says it'll take about a minute, and that's probably accurate. And what it's doing right now is it's actually making a duplicate of the template, the Hello World template skill, and it's doing that into a code commit Git repository. It's also going to do a build of the intent interaction model. It's going to deploy the Lambda code for the Hello World skill. It's going to do a whole lot of stuff to get it ready. And as soon as it's ready to go, it's going to make it available to you to edit here in the console. Says build complete down at the bottom. What that little build complete box means is that the interaction model has finished building. So that's good. We're getting close. It should be almost there. And here we are. So this is the developer console, and this is what it looks like when you're working on a skill. Now I'm not going to walk you through everything in here, but I'm going to focus on a few basic things you're going to need to get started. So the very first thing we're going to do is go look at the invocation name. And you're going to notice that the invocation name is Hello Console. That is the name we gave to our skill, but it also got copied over as the invocation name. So there's a difference between the name of your skill and the invocation name. The invocation name is how you launch it. The name can actually be different. You can call it whatever you want. In this case, they're the same, no big deal. Cool, let's go look at the interaction model. In the interaction model, we have several intents. Now, I cover these in my book. I'm not going to go into any great detail of what intents are here. However, just know that intents are the things that you intend for Alexa to do, or that a user intends for Alexa to do when they're interacting with your skill. Specifically, the hello world intent, if the user says any of these sample utterances like hello, how are you, say hi world, say hi or hi, or something similar to that, these are the kinds of things that are going to trigger the hello world intent. So the user may say many different things, but they all mean the same thing. They all intend the same thing. So they're going to go to the hello world intent. Now we can also add to this if you want. We can add in here something like howdy. We can add aloha. We can add, whatever you want to put in here. But if you do make changes to it like that, you're going to want to be sure and save it. And you're going to do a build model. What this is going to do is cause Alexa to do a build of the interaction model so that Alexa understands what it is that your skill supports and does. Okay? And among all those things, it does a little bit of machine learning work to kind of figure out that, if you say howdy or hello, or if you say something that kind of means those words, then that'll also get mapped to hello world intent. It's pretty good about figuring those things out for you. Great. So while it's building, it's doing a quick build. What a quick build means is that it does a basic kind of a baseline build of the interaction model, and then it does a more deep machine learning training a model around the interaction model. I'm going to let it do that. It's almost finished though. It looks like it is finished. In fact, there it goes. There's the build completed. I'm going to switch over here to the code tab, and this is going to allow me to edit my JavaScript code that fulfills this. So I'm going to focus specifically on the hello world intent handler, and I'll bump that font up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. But you see we have a hello world intent handler. All request handlers pretty much look the same. They have a can handle function and a handle. If can handle returns true, then handle gets called. If can handle returns false, then Alexa is going to seek out somebody else who can handle this. So in this case, the kind of request I'm looking for is an intent request for hello world intent. And if that happens, then I'm going to say hello world. Now, let's change that. Let's make it a little bit more unique. Since we're working from the developer console, I'm going to say hello developer console. And I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to deploy this. Deploying it means is that we're going to package this up and deploy it to the AWS Lambda that is behind my Alexa hosted skill. So this will take just a few seconds, shouldn't take too long, and once it's ready, we'll be able to test it. There it is, deployment successful. Let's go to the test tab and kick the tires on this. Now, one of the things we're going to have to do before we get started is we're going to have to turn development mode on so that the test console will allow us to work with it. And another thing you need to know is that you can both talk to it by holding down this button and speaking to Alexa, or you can type your question or your interaction with Alexa into this box. Either way is perfectly suitable. It's up to you on how you want to do it. Clearly, if you're in a room full of people, maybe doing this is a little weird. You don't want them to hear you testing, and maybe they don't want to hear you testing either. So typing it is a little bit more convenient, but the results are going to ultimately be the same. So I'm going to say open hello console. Now, if you are using this for yourself, you're going to actually see the results, but you're also going to hear them because Alexa is going to speak back to you. Essentially what she said is, welcome, you can say hello or help, which would you like to try? So now I'm going to trigger that hello world intent by saying hello.
Hello, developer console.
And it says hello developer console, exactly what we wanted it to do. Another way to launch this would be go directly into the hello world intent by saying ask hello console to say hello.
Hello, developer console.
And in this case, it bypassed the launch intent request and went straight to the hello world intent request handler. And there we are, hello developer console. So we've started a new project, we've developed it, made some changes to it, we've deployed it, and we've tested it using the developer console. Now let's take a look at another option for starting, developing, deploying, and testing an Alexa skill. If working in a browser-based editor isn't for you, perhaps you want to use a command line interface. For that, let's take a look at the ASK CLI, or the Alexa Skills Kit CLI, an option that's going to allow you to do most of your work at the command line, with the editor of your choice. All right, to use the ASK CLI, first you're going to have to install it. Not a big deal, pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward. If you use npm, you can say npm install -- global ASK CLI. Now, I don't need to do this. I've already installed it, but if you're new to this, maybe you need to do this. So this is how you would get it installed. Once it's installed, then you're also going to need to do ask configure. And what ask configure is going to do is after I hit enter, it will ask you some questions and ask you to authenticate to your Alexa developer account or your Amazon developer account. If you plan to use the ASK CLI to deploy to your own personal AWS Lambda account, not the Lambda that Alexa Hosted Skills uses, but your own personal Lambda account, you're also going to have it log in to AWS as well. But I've already done all these things. I'm going to leave it up to you to figure that out for yourself. Pretty straightforward once you're getting ready to do it. I've already done it. I don't need to do it. And if I tried to do it right now, it might screw something up and mess up my configuration for the ASK CLI, and I just don't want to do that. So I've already installed it. Now the next thing I need to do is start a new skill project. So I'm going to say ask new. Ask new is going to ask me a few questions. The first question it's going to ask me is, what language do you want to use? I'm going to pick Node. Python's also a fantastic choice, and Java is a choice that the developer console didn't offer us. Now I'm a Java developer by day. I love it. I've been working with Java for very long time. I remember the early days of writing applets in Java. I worked with Java when it was Java 1.0.2, and so Java is very near and dear to me, but I'm not going to choose Java when I'm working with Alexa skills. The main reason for it is that the tooling and the framework support is just not as rich as it is for Node or Python. Why I don't choose Python? Again, as I said earlier, it's because Node feels more comfortable to me. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Python. You're welcome to use it. A lot of people have great success using Python when they're developing their skills. For me personally, I prefer working with Node. Now I have my choice of Alexa hosted skills, or AWS hosted with CloudFormation, or AWS Lambda, or self-hosted. Now, the Alexa hosted skill, that was an option we had in the developer console. Self-hosted, that was also an option we had in the developer console. Here with the CLI, we have some new options. We have AWS with CloudFormation and AWS Lambda. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details of how you work with those today, in this video anyway, so check those out for yourself. For me, I'm going to stick with Alexa hosted skills. It's a great way to get started, especially if you're new to this and you don't need any sort of the flexibility and power that are afforded to you with AWS Lambda or even with CloudFormation. Alexa hosted skills, fantastic option. It's free. It's going to do a lot of the setup work for you, things you don't have to worry about yourself. So that's what I'm going to pick. We have to pick which region that our skill is going to be deployed to. So even though it's Alexa hosted skills, it's still going to be deployed in AWS Lambda somewhere, just not our Lambda account. So which region do we want to put it in? Feel free to pick the region that you think is most suitable. I'm going to stick with US East 1. And what is my skill name? Well, I'm going to call it not Hello World Skill, that's the default if I hit enter now, but I'm going to say Hello Command Line. And it's going to ask me for a folder to put it in. And by default, it's going to be based on whatever the name was. It's going to say Hello Command Line. So what it's doing right here is the same thing it did in the console. It's creating a duplicate of the Hello World template. It is going to deploy the Lambda version of that to AWS Lambda. It is going to build the interaction model. It is going to put all this in a code commit git repository. And when it's ready, it's going to actually do a git clone and clone that to my local file system. We're going to see that here in a second. It also does some other Alexa hosted skills setup, things like setting up a DynamoDB and an AWS S3 bucket for you to store any sort of resources you want to store there pertaining to your skill. So it's going to do all those things for you, and that's why it takes about a minute. There's a lot of things it needs to do to get set up. But here momentarily it will be ready. Here it goes. It's cloning it to the local file system. And as soon as it's ready, we're going to open this up in VS Code and edit it. Now, I said I'm going to open it in VS Code. You could actually pick whatever editor you like to use. So I'm going to cd into the Hello Command Line directory. I'm going to open it up. And VS Code is opening, and here we go. Now what's going to open right away without me even asking for it is going to be the Alexa Skills Toolkit Extensions Home tab. Now we're not going to use the Alexa Skills Kit extension in this part of the video. That's going to come later in the next section of the video. So for now I'm going to close it and kind of pretend it's not there. So the first place I want to go is under Skill Package. Skill Package is where my interaction models and my skill manifest is going to be, and specifically I want to look at my English US interaction model. And what you're going to see is the invocation name is Hello Command Line. It's based on whatever I gave the skill name. I've observed that if you give it a name that has dashes in it, if I would have called it Hello Dash Command Dash Line, it would not have given me an invocation name of Hello Command Line. It would have given me an invocation name of Change Me, and I would have had to change it. But since I chose not to give it a name with dashes in it, it gave me an invocation name that matched up with what the skill name is. Fantastic. All right. If it does give you Change Me, be sure and change it as it says. I can come down here and I can change the samples, the sample utterances, just like I did in the previous example. Throw those in there, and you can change this all you want. Now, you can imagine I could do some other things in here, but for the purposes of this very simple demonstration, I'm not going to do anything else other than hit save. I'm going to come over here to Lambda. I'm going to open up index.js, and you're going to recognize this is pretty much the same thing we saw when working in the developer console. I am going to focus specifically on the Hello World intent handler. I'm going to bump up that font a little bit for you. There you go. And you're going to see that its output is Hello World, just like it was when we worked in the developer console, but I'm going to change that to say Hello Command Line. and I'm going to hit save. Great, we've made our changes. We've tweaked our interaction model, we've changed our intent handler. We're ready to try this out, but first we need to deploy it. So how do you deploy a skill when you're working at the command line? Well, as I mentioned, this is a Git repository. It is a clone of a Git repository. So all I need to do to deploy it is say git add, git commit, initial tweaks maybe, and finally git push. Now what's happening when I say git push is everything you would imagine. It is pushing my local code into the remote Git repository. Specifically, it is a Git repository that is hosted by Amazon in code commit. And code commit is going to pick up that code. It's going to pick up the changes. When it detects the changes, it's going to pick them up. It's going to deploy the Lambda code, package it up, and deploy it into AWS Lambda. It's going to pick up the interaction model, and it's going to do a build on the interaction model. And at some point, it's going to be ready. And we're going to be able to test this. Now, the reason I say at some point is it does take a moment or two, especially if you're changing both the interaction model and the JavaScript code. It's going to take a little while. So give it, be patient with it. If you're not patient with it, you may go in and try to test it and find out that the changes you made weren't applied. So just be a little patient with it, and when it's ready, it'll be ready. But by now it should be ready, so we're ready to kick the tires on it and give it a shot. Now, we could use the same testing tool that the developer console offered us. In fact, if I pull my browser back up, you're going to see that in the list we have Hello Command Line. We have the same project that we just edited and initialized from the command line using VS Code. It is now visible. It's out now there in developer console. And so I could go in here and I could go to the test tab just like before and I could test it, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to get rid of this. We're going to do this all from the command line, and we're going to say ASK dialog. So we're going to use the ASK CLI's dialog subcommand to kick this thing off. And it's going to say, it's going to give us a prompt and give us an option to do some stuff. One of the cool things you can do with this, I'm going to make this window a little bit wider so it doesn't wrap weird. One of the options you have is you can also have it record whatever you do to a file so that you can also replay it later on, so you don't have to keep retyping it all the time. We're not going to do that in this video, but just wanted to let you know that you could do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say open hello command line. Recall that is the hello command line is the invocation name for the skill. So when I say open hello command line, it should go to the launch request handler for our skill. And it's going to say welcome. You can say hello or help. Which would you like to try? Yes, that in fact came from the launch request handler, as you can see right there. It's part of the launch request handler. Coming back over here, I'm going to say hello. And it should say hello command line. There it is. It worked. Now I can also, just like I did in developer console, I can say ask hello command line to say hello. And again, it's going to go bypass the launch request handler, and it's going to go straight into the hello world intent handler, and it's going to say hello command line. Great. Now to get out of here, you can say .quit, and it leaves. Great. Working from the command line is a fantastic option. But maybe you want to take advantage of some of the features that are available in VS Code if you're using the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension. So let's take a look at our final option, working with the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension for Visual Studio Code. Using the ASK CLI is a fantastic option for deploying and creating Alexa skills. However, even though I may be using that, I still need an editor of some sort, and for me, that editor of choice is going to be VS Code. So as long as I'm using VS Code, why not take advantage of the features and the power that is afforded to me by the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension for Visual Studio Code? So to wrap up this video, let's have a look at how to use the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension for VS Code. Alright, if you're wanting to use the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension for VS Code, you're going to need to install it into your VS Code installation. To do that, just install it the same way you do any extension. You go to the extensions option here and you search for Alexa, and you're going to find pretty quickly Alexa Skills Kit, or the ASK Toolkit extension. Now I already have it installed. I don't need to install it again, but if I didn't already have it installed, I'd have an install option here. You click that, it takes a few moments. Once it's installed, you're ready to go. I'm going to leave that up to you to do. I already have it installed, so with that said, I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to come over here instead to this option here. Notice it looks like the Alexa logo, which, in case you've never noticed this before, is just a circle with a speech bubble inside of it. And I'm going to say create a skill. Now this is roughly equivalent to ASK New if you're using the Alexa Skills Kit CLI. It is roughly equivalent to create skill if you're using the developer console. Pretty much the same thing. Here I'm going to give it a unique name just like I did before, but this time I'm going to call it Hello Code. How about Hello Visual Studio? That'll give it a little bit more clear name. How about Hello Visual Studio? I'm going to say English is my default language, but feel free to pick any other language you'd like. Custom skills is the only skill model that is supported by the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension, but that's fine because that's exactly what we want. We have our choice of Alexa hosted versus provision your own. I'm going to stick with Alexa hosted just like before. I have my choice of languages, Node or Python. And for all the reasons I've given already in this video, I won't repeat them here. I'm going to stick with Node. I'm going to stick with US East 1. Also, US East is Northern Virginia. And then I'm going to pick a local directory. So the local directory I'm going to give it is here at, where did I call it? Skill code is what I called it. There we go. And because I've bumped the font up a little bit, you can't really see that create button, but there it is. I'm going to hit create. And notice it's going to, before I hit create, notice it's going to create it at that directory. I created it under the name Hello Visual Studio. So skill creation's in progress. This is doing all of the same stuff that we've already talked about. So rather than belabor the point, I'm just going to do some post editing when I create the video, and you won't have to wait for this to go on. So hang tight. We'll be ready to roll in just a moment. All right, so now that the project has been cloned locally, I can come over here and edit it just like I did when I worked with the ASK CLI. Nothing about that is any different. So I'm going to go into my skill package. I'm going to take a look at the interaction model. You're going to see that the invocation name is Hello Visual Studio, just like it was before. It based it on the skill's name. My sample utterances are pretty much the same as they always are. I'm going to change those just for fun, even though we may not actually do anything with this, just to show you that you can do this. I'm going to go in there and put howdy, and then we'll be good with that, and I'll save that. We're going to go to our Lambda, and we're going to make pretty much the same kind of change we made before, but instead of saying hello world, we're going to say hello Visual Studio. I'm going to hit save, and now we're ready to deploy this. Now I have some options here. I can deploy this the exact same way I deployed it with command line. I can go to the directory that it was cloned into, and I can do a git push to get it out there, and that'll work. I can also do that from VS Code. So if I go to source control, I'm going to give it a commit message, maybe initial changes. I'm going to say good, go for it, sync changes, and it's going to do a push out there. And just like if I had done this at the command line, code commit is going to pick up the changes. It's going to package up the JavaScript code, deploy it to Lambda. It is going to build the interaction model, and it is going to have everything ready for me to start testing it. All right, looks like it's pushed. There are no changes pending. So I'm going to go to the Alexa tab over here. I'm going to go to deploy skill, and what you're going to see is that everything's been pushed already. The skill package has been synced up. It's doing some work right now. This is probably building the model. And so we're just going to wait on that to finish up, and then we'll be ready to test it. Great. Everything seems to be synced up. We're ready to roll. Now we could go to the command line and we could test it using ask dialog just like we did before. We could go to the developer console and we can use the testing facility in there. Or we can use what's built in already in Visual Studio Code using the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension. So we come over here to test skill, and we're going to open the simulator. I'm going to turn the skill stage to development, and I'm going to say open hello Visual Studio. Again, Alexa's not going to speak to us like it did in the console. It's going to be a little bit more like what we did at the command line, but we're going to see the results. Welcome. You can say hello or help. Which would you like to try? To that I'll say hello. And it says hello Visual Studio, exactly as we expected. And just for completion's sake, I can also say ask hello Visual Studio to say hello, which will bypass the launch request and go straight into the hello world intent request. And it'll say hello Visual Studio. So there you go. We were able to do everything we needed to do: create, edit, deploy, and test our Alexa skill entirely in VS Code. In this video, I hope you've got a glimpse of what it means to start developing, make changes, deploy, and test your Alexa skill using three options: the Alexa Developer Console, the ASK CLI, and the Alexa Skills Toolkit extension for VS Code. What's great about these options is they're interchangeable. You don't have to make a choice on which one you use. You can start using one of them, you can edit using a different one, and you can deploy using one of the other options if you want on the same project. You don't have to make a choice. You can go back and forth between them as you see fit. In fact, I often find myself starting my project either using the ASK CLI or using VS Code, doing most of my work in VS Code, and then maybe making small tweaks here and there as I'm developing using the Alexa Developer Console. So you can pick and choose, do whatever you want. The one thing you should keep in mind, though, is if you do make any changes to your code in the Alexa Developer Console, that's going to result in a new git commit being created. So be sure and go back to the command line and do a git pull to get the latest version of the code before you continue doing any work in VS Code. So with that said, thank you very much. Check out my books. The book on the right, that is a book on developing applications using the Spring Framework and Spring Boot. The book on the left is actually more relevant to this video: Build Talking Apps for Alexa. It goes into far more detail than I was able to cover in this short video. Check that out. Tell your friends about it. I really do appreciate it. And with that, thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time when I put out another one of these videos on developing for Alexa.